Okay, we have a unique program up next. And in that program, we're going to explore the dynamic relationship between those who fund Jewish programs and the professionals who partner with them. I'll share a little bit more with you about this in just a few moments. But to set the tone for this part of our program, we've asked our friends and partners, Arnee and Walt Winshall, to frame this section of our day by sharing their distinct perspectives on this important topic. Arnee and Walt Winshall are both products of strong synagogue school programs, USY, and Jewish camps. They've been active in Jewish education as parents and as lay leaders for more than 25 years. Arnee has also held professional positions and is currently founding president and CEO of Hebrew at the Center. They are founders of JCDS, Boston's Jewish Community Day School. They've served as active board members of various important Jewish nonprofits, including the New England region of the American Technion Society, Hebrew College, the Yiddish Book Center, Jesna, Ravstock, the Harold Grinspoon Foundation, Foundation for Jewish Camp, MIT Hillel, Jewish Interactive, and of course, JEIC. Wow. In particular, I want to say that Arnee, for me, has been my teacher. As I've navigated, she doesn't like when I do this, but I have to say it's true. As I've navigated our journey into the world of Jewish education, it really has been a connector, a collaborator, a challenger when it was needed, including today, and a friend. And she and Walt have just been really wonderful partners and friends, and it's my pleasure to invite you up to the podium.
Good morning. It's so great to look out and see all of you here. We really are privileged to be part of this, and we really appreciate all of the energy, the thoughtfulness, the presence that you all bring, and the commitment to Jewish education that this room represents. So thank you for including us. I'm enthusiastic about the next session, Where Money Meets Mission. It's an opportunity to really explore the funder-provider collaborations, together with the possibility that it will inform our ongoing relationships. Sometimes visionary ideas initiate with a funder who finds a provider to help actualize the vision. And other times, providers generate the ideas and seek out funders who will recognize and support their initiative's development. Or in our case, sometimes it just, the two of us get into trouble together. But either way, when collaborating, it's desirable, in my mind, for funders and professionals to identify both the common ground as well as the areas in which they need to work toward consensus, with trust, to develop a trusting and generative relationship. So I actually want to turn over to Walt to reflect on this, as he's my teacher.
It's my pleasure also to be here in this very distinguished group. I have the advantage of knowing very little about education. But I do have opinions about how the relationship between the funder and the professional the context in which it should occur. Much of my thinking on this subject has arisen in the commercial context rather than the nonprofit context. But I think that there are areas where learning across that boundary is reasonable. In our history, when we look back, we notice that the areas that we've been particularly attracted to as funders have been areas where there has been some existing need that was either poorly served or unserved altogether, and where we noticed that there was available expertise that could bring improvement to the poorly served or unserved need. And that's what has attracted our attention. I think that's where, it's the forum where this priority on innovation arises, is for that, seeking out those areas where new technology, new expertise can satisfy a need better than the way it's been done in the past. In our case, the JCDS example was motivated, I think, in large part by the absence of a pluralist alternative 25 years ago in Boston, where there were only denominational alternatives for Jewish day school education. We both grew up in the conservative movement. In my case, the conservative movement was one of those happy compromises that made both sets of grandparents unhappy. The Orthodox on the right, the secular on the left. There were other aspects of the alternatives that were available at that time that we felt were poorly serving the educational needs of the child, in that case our oldest, our daughter. And when Arnee started the exploration of the possibility of a non-denominational school, I'll just relate one anecdote of it. A lot of the aspects of what she was proposing to undertake were viewed as very ambitious, but this was viewed as impossible. And so she was ahead of the curve. The other example, the example of Hebrew, is an obvious case where we surely can do better than what is currently being done at the national level in the investment in teaching Hebrew by creating student outcomes where the students' proficiency in Hebrew can actually be demonstrated. There is an opportunity here to bring existing expertise, largely from other languages, to the study of Hebrew. And so that's been our more recent ambition.
Well, so in our next session, we're going to hear more from other people as to how they look at their investments. But in addition to the opportunity to better serve an area of need, there are other key traits that we value in the people involved. So I want to focus a little bit on that. Traits that we've seen that contribute to success. Traits like resilience, motivation, ambition, and integrity. And I think I'm going to invite Walt to kind of reflect about the nature of the relationship with a provider, with the executive of an organization, with the leadership of an organization.
Well, these are going to be opinions. These are my opinions. I think that one of the obligations of the executive to the major donors, to all the donors, but in particular to the major donors to an organization, or the investors in the organization, is to keep them from being surprised, to keep them up to date and informed about what is going on. Sometimes there are aspirations and plans that actually work out. And sometimes there are aspirations and plans that don't work out exactly as anticipated. But in either case, I think it's incumbent on the professional to keep the investor informed of what progress has been made, what problems have arisen, what are the revised plans for dealing with the problem. So that's one area. I've heard the opinion expressed occasionally. It's a lot of work to keep the investor informed. Well, that's somebody's opinion. They're entitled to their opinion. In my opinion, a person with that opinion shouldn't be in a leadership position. The other area is to do with the investor's obligation and how they talk to the professional. It's important to recognize the investor is not running these projects or organizations. The investor is not an executive. The investor has all kinds of ideas. Some of these ideas may be good ideas. Some of these ideas may be bad ideas. Either way, it's up to the professional to decide whether or not to implement them. Thank you very much for the update. I have a few ideas about what you're doing. But before I give them to you, I'd like to just establish some ground rules. I have a whole bunch of ideas. Inevitably, it'd be very unlikely that all of my ideas were good ideas. In fact, it would also be unlikely if all of my ideas were bad ideas. So I'd like to establish the ground rules that if I have any bad ideas, you won't implement them. If I have a good idea and you implement it and it works out, don't bother to give me credit. I don't need it. I'll be very happy with the progress of my investment that has resulted from your implementing a good idea and having it work out. But please, when we meet in the future and I say, why did you do that way? I don't want you to say, oh, because you told me to. You know, if I have 5 ideas, and if each one is 50-50 between a good idea or a bad idea, it means 97% of the time, they will not all be good ideas. And 97% of the time, they will not all be bad ideas. So I have all kinds of ideas. I'm not here every day. I'm entitled to think about this. I want to be free. I want to be free to be able to express my speculative ideas, my confident ideas, all kinds of ideas, knowing that you're not going to implement the bad ones. Some of my ideas might be good ideas for some other organization or for some other time. In any event, now we can be clear. You're not going to implement my bad ideas, and I can give you my good ideas. This is one component of a broader notion that in the relationship, I'm going to be conscious of the need to do no harm. It's a kind of overriding idea in the relationship. So those are my opinions about the funder, the investor, and the professional relationship. We'll hear some actual people doing it in the session to come.
Thank you. So, to close. So the next session, Where Money Meets Mission, Provider-Funder Collaborations, it was designed to stimulate our thinking about how the relationship between the funder, the philanthropic investor, and the professional leadership, sometimes turns out to be me, contributes to the success of the initiative. We all share a vision that our work will result in a community that has an educated, literate, engaged leadership. As you listen to the presenters in the 4 groups, Walt and I encourage you to think intentionally at least about 2 questions, reflect about them. What are the values that you prioritize in your innovations and collaborations? Which elements conditions, characteristics, and traits guide these relationships. What we're up to here at JEIC, with the help of all of you, is to role model values-driven behaviors, and in so doing, strengthen Jewish education. We have the opportunity to demonstrate the value of community, kehillah, the sanctity of human beings, b'tselem Elokim, and do no harm. Essentially, v'ahavta l'reacha k'mocha. In our relationships, that's what we have the opportunity to role model. And working collaboratively with one another, no matter what our roles are in the innovation, we can create conditions that foster rich and meaningful Jewish lives for our communities, for our families, for our children. So, before we cede the podium to Todd, who will give us our marching orders, I just want to use the opportunity to extend our personal thanks and appreciation to Rabbi Shmuel Feld, he is the one responsible for this shidduch with the Mayberg family and foundation, and has for many years been my teacher. To Todd Suko, who has become my teacher. To Sharon Frindell, who has been and now continues to be a partner in crime. To the Mayberg Foundation and the JEIC staff, Amanda, Rebecca, Marnie, who just keep us all going and inspired and making all these things happen. And then, of course, to Louis and Manette, who have become dear friends, but have enabled this critical work to be nurtured, who living their values with generosity, warmth, integrity, and vision bring us all together. So thank you.